welcome back to the Clubroom, and brought to you by the Winning Academy. My name is Mark Moyer, and we are fired up to have two gentlemen here today, and one person that's on the DL a little bit, or I think we're calling it, she's out of commission for tonight, and we'll explain why in a second, but I'm going to actually read a little bit about Justin. I usually try to memorize and just say it, but this is a really interesting story. So Justin Roethlingshoefer, at the age of 14, so this is, he's growing up and he's 14 years old, and he was already back then even obsessed with peak performance. He saw how, if you're at the top of your game, how even somebody at that point with less, let's say, physical skill sets can be much better than those who have been physically gifted. And that particular obsession led to a career first as a professional athlete, and he was a hockey player and a damn good one, but he also was a strength and performance coach in the NHL for 10 years. And you don't get to have that kind of a job for that long unless you're pretty damn good at what you do. And so he also realized that entrepreneurs and business leaders, they came to him on advice on what he was doing in the NHL. And it kind of dawned on him, wait a second, I can be doing this for executives. I can be doing this for corporations that really want to raise their game and elevate it. So what he did was he created Own It. And he wanted to make sure that he taught people how to maximize all the output, the performance, et cetera, of those leaders. And he started rolling with that. But then he realized, look, the outer energy out here, that's only half the equation. There's also the internal side. And when it comes to entrepreneurs and executives, all that physical stuff is nothing unless you've got the mental and the emotional acumen to really make better and smarter decisions for yourself and for your company. And so what he did was he founded Own It with his fiance, Alyse, and she focuses a lot on the inner energy. And so a quick couple words about her. She's actually still recovering from COVID. And Justin's also still recovering from COVID. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But she is incredibly accomplished. She's checked all the boxes. She speaks 3 languages. She owns an apartment here in New York City, where I am. She was an executive at Christian Louboutin, but she was checking the boxes, but she wasn't fulfilled. And what she's doing now is developing a system internally to create that fulfillment. So they've both teamed up to create this incredible program and coaching that can really bring out the best in all of us by balancing that inner and outer energy. So Justin, I hope I did okay on that intro. It's fantastic what you do. And so now I'm just going to have you come on in and say hello. And then we're going to bring in our special guest, Warren. And so Warren is, there he is. Hey, Justin. All right. All right. Warren is originally, I think he's originally from Alberta, unless he went to college there, but he's a Canadian gentleman. He's spent a long career in supply chain and logistics, and really knows his stuff. And he's a partner with Lighthouse 9 Group, and he's now the CEO at BC Tree Fruits Cooperative. But in his case, he was going through some challenges, and we're going to hear shortly from him and from Justin as to how really turned the corner there. So Warren, if you could, let me bring you in here. So all you do is click on the yes button there when it shows up. And what we're going to talk about today are a few different things. Number one, some stress optimization techniques. Hello, Warren.
Hello.
2, we're going to talk about, and this is something Justin's passionate about, how time management is wrong. And I'm really interested in hearing about that because I'm very, very qualified at mismanaging my time. We're also going to talk about how to leverage capacity builders. We're going to talk about how to have some energy management wins throughout your day, and also how data-driven energy fuels success. So we're covering a lot of ground here, but first and foremost, I need to ask Justin, did I do okay with that intro? Was that?
No, you nailed it. You're all over it.
Whew. I got to admit, some of this material a little over my head. Just saying.
It's all right. It's all right. It's new. It's innovative. It's like the Tesla. No one really knows it until they get in and give it a drive.
That's interesting. I like that analogy.
But you get in and you give it a drive, you're never getting out.
I like that. So, so tell me a little bit about just once again, I talked briefly earlier about your focus on peak performance, and how if you're at your peak, or even if you're just under your peak and so forth, you're still going to create results that are much better than maybe your competition, whether it's competition in business or in sports. But tell me a little bit about how you started seeing that you could take that from sport and into business.
Yeah, so when I was working in the National Hockey League, it was weird to me how I always had the owners of the NHL teams, the business leaders. I worked my last place I worked was in Anaheim, and so Orange County is obviously a booming mecca for a lot of major businesses, major business owners, the tech world. And so people were always coming up and saying, "Hey, like, how can I have more energy? How can I lose weight? How can I perform at a higher level? How can I help my team?" And I was always just like giving one-off answers. And at the end of the day, I was like, I need to stop doing that, because it's so much more than that. And the more that I actually sat down with these people and started to understand like the complexities of what they had going on, it became known like, oh my God, like it's no different than what I'm doing with my NHL athletes and monitoring them on a day-to-day basis. And if you think about it, any of these wearable pieces of technology that we have today, uh, the the way in which we have almost simplified it down for people, has almost been a bad thing. And the reason I say that is because for a team of 25 men in hockey, 48 in baseball, 82 in football, we have individuals like myself who were hired specifically to look at the data, look at the information, and apply it over to these men and women. And now what these technology companies have done, the Aura Ring, the Fitbit, the Whoop Band, the Apple, the Amazon, you name it, whatever you want to go off of, have taken that same technology that we use, for lack of a better word, and have now made it available to the masses, but given it to people that don't know the difference between an avocado and a pear, and said, here, implement it. And that's where we've gone so wrong. And if you think about it, in the athletic space, we have in hockey, you have to perform for 82 games and are held accountable 82 times a year. You have to perform at your best 82 times a year. You go to playoffs, you get exhibition in there, say 100 times a year. You have to perform, you are held accountable for your preparation. Over the course of that time, you then have All-Star break, Christmas, long week, your off week there, that you can kind of take the breaks off and you have a little bit of intermittent time to relax a little bit. Then your season's only 8-9 months long at best. And so you have a 3, maybe 4-month off season. And then your career as a professional athlete, or an athlete in general, is anywhere from 2 to 8 years if you're really good and lucky. Well, we now apply that over to business, and especially entrepreneurship, especially the executive, the CEO level. There's no off days, baby. You're held accountable 365 days a year. You don't get a week off at Christmas time. You don't get a week off because it's March 15th. You don't get a bye week. You don't get any of these things. And I'm telling you, I don't know many people that can retire when they're 32, 35, 38, 42 years old. You have to make sure that that career spans out 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And so in knowing that, the number one thing that we can start to help people manage is their energy. Because what we've been taught, and I know I'm stealing your thunder here, but what we've been taught over this for so long is that we need to manage time. But guess what? You, me, Warren Buffett, Drew Brees, and Jeff Bezos all have the same 24 hours in a day. We are not going to get any more time back. When we are done this call at 9, 10, 11 p.m. at night, whatever time we choose to be done, The time we've spent here, we do not get back. We don't get another second. We can't squeeze another minute out of the day. When it hits 12:01, it's tomorrow. It will be Wednesday. And there's no other time to get out of it. But the moment that we decide to manage our energy, time becomes irrelevant. Time no longer matters, because our energy is what determines how we show up in every single second of the day and how long we can actually show up in that way. So the moment we change our mind from focusing on time management to energy management is the moment that we can show up at a better version of us for that, what Matt said, 24/7, 365. Even though that kind of attitude is going to get us into what we call that burnout stage, because it's feeling like we're continually have to give and give and give and give.
I'm not really, hang on a second though. I don't know what you mean by this burnout phase.
Yeah.
At all. I mean, look, it was 6 hours last night that I didn't work. But then I got out of bed and started all over again. So, it's interesting because I think that, and look, there's a lot of business owners here on this call and who'll be watching and listening to this later, and senior executives, and it doesn't matter where you are on the spectrum of, in a company, or you're an athlete and so forth. It's so important to not just sort of manage that energy, but maximize, if possible, every second that you have, because you said it so well. That second that just went by is gonzo. Obviously, we want to try to make sure that each second is a valuable second to us. But look, we all waste a lot of those seconds to an extent. But I think what I'd like to hear a little bit more of, and I'm going to shift gears and ask Warren a question here, if I could. Warren, so tell me a little bit about, I mean, look, you've spent a long career, working in industry, and tell me a little bit about, as you progressed, was there a thought process that, geez, as I get older and I work longer, things will get easier, or were you convinced they were going to get harder, or what do you think?
Yeah, you know what? I think I probably believed that, but the reality was, as I progressed, and especially when I went into the most senior roles that I've held, it was easy to convince yourself that you had to make the sacrifice. So I have to work at night. I have to work on the weekends. I have to get out of bed, and the first thing I do is I have to work in the morning. And the reality is, the cumulative effect of all of that was a lot of wear and tear. And when I reached out to Justin, what was it, Justin? Beginning of February? Something like that.
Yeah, I think it was January, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was, and growing up, I mean, I was involved in the Olympic hockey program in Canada. I was in great shape. I was doing all those things. I had all this energy, and just over time, with all the cumulative experiences, I was just out of steam. And if I were to characterize my experience, I wasn't sleeping at night. So I don't know if anyone on the call has ever had the experience of, waking up at 1 a.m. and not being able to get back to sleep and going, you know what, maybe I'll just start to do some work to actually make this time productive. And you work from 1 till 3 or 1 till 4. Laurel is one of my colleagues. She got countless emails from me in the middle of the night. And then you get into the day, you're out of energy, you're not eating properly. And, eventually, I was just out of steam. And, for everyone's benefit, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in August of last year. So I had somewhat of a traumatic diabetic event, which I wouldn't want anybody to go through. And when I left the hospital, I was literally taking over 100 units of insulin a day. And, I'm down to less than 20 units a week right now.
Wow.
So
wow, that's great.
So, it's finding that balance, and you can convince yourself of anything. And, having that balance and making sure you've got the right priorities is just so important.
That's great. So before we go much further, I just want to point out something for all of you attending today. There's a Q&A section on the right of the screen there. I encourage you all to ask as many questions as possible, throw them in there, and then I want everybody to take a look at those questions, and you can actually vote on them. So this way, the best questions go to the top, and the ones that ask, people what, favorite socks Justin likes to wear, whatever it is, that goes on the bottom. So this way, we get some really good quality questions. So make sure you throw those in there, the Q&A section. So, but that's amazing to hear, Warren, about how you went from 100 a day to 20 a week. That's fantastic. Now, speaking of that, because obviously it sounded like there was a cumulative effect of just the stress piling up and the energy that you put into this. And, over the course of time also, you feel like, at least in my case, I feel like I should always be accomplishing more. Like I'm older now. I've done a lot more. There's a lot of, highway behind me. I should be doing more. I should be driving a bigger car. I should be accomplishing a lot. I should climbing taller mountains easier and all that sort of thing. And it wears you down. It really does. So, Justin, we've talked about the idea of how do you really give me a tip or two or a technique or two on how to, we talk about stress optimization techniques, but give me a sense of what is one thing that all of us can do today or tonight or tomorrow to manage that?
So the number one thing that we can always do in this space is having the awareness, knowing that what is going on around us, and kind of touching on it. And this is really what I did a lot of my TED Talk on. It was the number one thing that I kept saying was what we measure, we can manage. And going back to even when I was a 14-year-old kid, the one thing that my dad said to me, he's on this call, I think, right now, was talent will get you noticed, but consistency will get you paid. And consistency was always what I was after. It stuck with me to this day. And it's continually what I was after was how do you become more consistent? Consistency will get you paid. And in knowing that, we all fall trap to exactly what you just said, Mark, is I feel like I should be doing more. I feel like I should be doing more. I feel like I should be further ahead. I feel like the pattern Warren was in. I can't sleep, so I'm not going to just waste my time here. I'm going to go do something. I'm going to go be productive. I'm going to go sit down at my computer and send 2 emails in an hour and a half. When's the last time you sat down? It took you an hour and a half to send 2 emails. I could do it at 7 a.m. in the morning. I could be done in 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's bringing the awareness back to what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. And in saying that, going back to like what's managed or what's measured is managed. How do we need to measure, or sorry, we need to manage our diabetes? We measure glucose. We need to manage our high cholesterol. We look at HDL, LDL total. We need to manage our money in the stock market. The stock market has a number. We need to manage our business. We look at EBITDA. We need to manage our home pricing. The homes have prices. All of these things have tangible numbers to it, but we've never put numbers or information to our energy. And that's what I've been studying since I was 14 years old, was HRV and heart rate variability and the information of what it is. And heart rate variability is literally the time variables between heartbeats that tells us how our body is handling the stress and strain that we are under every single day. Mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stress. Our body does not know the difference. A stressful day at work, having to make a really impactful decision that's going to impact the 5,500 people that are working for you, or a hard workout, your body sees it as the exact same type of stress and strain. It does not know the difference. And that, I think, is one of the key takeaways here, is that mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stress cannot be deferred by the body. And so we think that all of a sudden, simply because, you know what, just a really stressful day at work, and then you come home and you're in a fight with your spouse and your kids are irritating you and you've got to take Johnny to soccer practice and you get home late and you've got an email from work that you're looking at, you have not stepped away. You have not given yourself a moment. And thus, here's the other thing that's key in this, a key understanding, is that for every moment that we are awake throughout the day, you can only have one of two things. You can either have energy in or you can have energy out. And if we take a look at it, at the end of the day, 99% of people that we work with in Own It, whether it's me, Alyse, or our team, we see that 90, call it 95% of people's day are spent in energy out. And there's no rhythm there. We don't call it a balance, because if you were even to put energy out on a scale when they're here, you're always going to have more energy out. That's just life, baby. But it's creating this rhythm. And the rhythm that we want to create is energy in and energy out, things that are going to rejuvenate us. And so there's a system that we end up operating that we teach that takes a look at red, yellow, and green days. Red day being an extremely hard energy out day. That's 9 hours plus in the energy out space. Then we call them yellow days, which are 4 through 9. And then we call green days less than 4. Now, all of a sudden you're going to say, well, Justin, less than 4 hours of energy out, that means you can still have a 9-hour work day and have a green day. 100% you can. You 100% can work 9 hours a day, but guess what? You went for an hour workout, you went and got an hour massage, you went for a walk with your kids, you took an hour purposefully and intentionally with your wife, and you took half an hour to meditate in the middle of your day. Well, guess what? You've only been awake then for 13 hours in your day. And you still have 9 hours or 11 hours left. And so it goes back to the energy management component.
Well, let me throw in a quick question though. I'm just curious about something.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, is it possible to work where we may be putting energy out? I'm sending emails, I'm on phone calls and so forth. But is it possible to have an hour of energy in that's not necessarily chilling or walking or this and that? Is there a way to do energy in while working? Or is there such a thing?
The most common misconception is
Okay.
the moment that you start multitasking. Multitasking is the killer to energy in.
Phew, thank God, I can barely single task. So with that said, but what I'm saying is, let's say, for example, I'm having a conversation during work, but maybe it's a positive conversation and it's just, and it's talking about business that's going to be happening. I'm in a good mood about it. Is that still energy out though, even though it's positive energy, or how would you characterize that?
It's a great question. And the answer is no, it's still energy out. The reason being is things that you were extremely passionate about, things that you love, things that you, that theoretically give you energy. It's not an energy producing activity, because at some point, why is it new? Why is it exciting? Because it has some type of allure to it. But all of a sudden, like, business is exciting to me, but if I did Own It 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, I would begin to hate it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It's the same reason why a lot of youth athletes end up hating their sport, because their parents, whatever, make them go 7 days a week, and it's that they call it burnout. And so what we end up teaching as well is we teach this 4-quadrant phase, where in the upper left quadrant, we have what's called overreaching. And we know that we need stress to make us better. We know we need strain to stretch us. But we also know for every moment and every bit of time spent here, we need to be in the bottom right quadrant, which is regeneration. And when we create a rhythm between these, we end up meeting in the upper right quadrant, which is what we call ownership. And ownership is high on the HRV score and high on your anabolic energy. Positive, creative, flow state, energetic, leadership, all of those positive things that you see. When we spend too much time in overreaching and not enough in that regeneration space, we end up falling in a reverse curve to the bottom left quadrant, which is what we call that burnout space, or in the athletic world, overtraining. And what happens there? Your energy level is low, your HRV level is low, and you're in a catabolic state. We're more frustrated, we're more angry, we're more bitter, we lack confidence. We end up with this conflict-oriented energy. And those are the signs and symptoms of what happens when we get down there. And what we ended up finding, I mean, I'll read these stats to you, they're staggering. 1 of 6 employees is so overworked that they're unable to use up annual vacation time, despite the fact that Americans have the least vacation time in any of the industrialized worlds. 1 in 3 American workers reports that they have pressing jobs, that they have no downtime at work. 1 in 3 never leaves the building once they arrive at work. 1 in 7 believes management promotes people who habitually stay late. 1 in 5 says workplace pressures make them believe they must work even when they're sick or injured. 1 in 6 says they find it difficult to leave when they have a work emergency. And 1 in 12 feels that if they were to do so, that they would be fired or demoted. Like, how does that create a positive work culture for us either? The other thing that just came out, Forbes just put this out. They did a study of over 2,700 different executive and leadership teams around the country, 27 different industries. And they found that 80% of those leadership and executive teams were burnt out. And from burnt out, they said lack of energy, specific lack of energy.
Well, and
Of those, only 10% of those 2,700 leadership and executive teams said they felt confident in their leadership abilities due to the lack of energy that they showed.
well, look, and that carries into a whole wide array of things, because it's look, when you're tired, worn out, whatever it is, you can't drive as well, you can't do all kinds of things as well, right? And we know that. So I'm going to shift gears and ask Warren this. When you're, because I can tell you how my experience is when you're cheering on your favorite, let's say, hockey team, that's energy out, right? That's not energy. Like, normally I would sit and want to relax and watch the game, but I can't do that. It's energy out, it's not energy in, right? So but in your case, did you feel that as you progressed and then you found out you're diagnosed with diabetes, was there a moment where you just said, shit, that's enough, I mean, I got to do something? Or was it over a course of time? I mean, what was that moment like?
Yeah, the moment was in January of this year, and it literally felt like I'm showing up, and I'm giving it everything I got, but you're showing up with 60%, right? And I just stepped back and went, what am I giving up? I'm giving up, first and foremost, energy at home. So energy for my wife, energy for my kids, and so on. Then it was saying, am I being as effective as I can be for my leadership team and for the 600 people in our company? And ultimately, I just looked at it and went, I owe it to my family, I owe it to my team to make sure I'm bringing everything I've got every day. But it was redefining what bringing everything is. Because growing up, I mean, Justin knows this story. Growing up, I watched my dad work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, but he had nothing left. And,
right.
If somebody would have said to me, between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock, when you hit the lull, meditate. If somebody would have said that to me, I would have said, not sure about that. I'm not a big meditator. But you know what? I do it now. I make sure I'm eating properly. I've got a plan in the morning for how I start my day. I've got a plan for how I end my day. So I'm sleeping better than I'm actually sleeping. Which, you just step back and look at all of that. You look at the environment you work in. So, it was really that moment in January to say, there is so much more that I can bring. I just need to know how. And that's where Justin and Alyse have come in, because it's that combination of what Justin brings on the physical side and what Alyse brings on the mindfulness side that really brings it all together. Like, it's been remarkable.
Well, let me ask you, do you feel that your employees picked up on that back in, end of last year and into January, that do you think others noticed that in you at the office at work? or just I mean, I guess with COVID, you're not there necessarily, but did they see that building up? Do you feel, or were we able to mask it a little bit?
You know what? I mean, you do your best to mask it. And actually, I've got one of my executives on the line, so perhaps we can ask her. But I've literally done things like I've said to my executive team from 7 p.m. until 7 a.m. If you need me, you can get a hold of me 24 hours a day. So literally, I'm accessible anytime. But between 7 and 7, I'm not checking email. My phone goes, my phone still works, but everything else shuts down. And I literally create that space. I mean, a big part of it is I'm creating space for my family too.
Right.
Right. So I'm running a very large enterprise. But first and foremost, I've got to be true to my family. And again, you can convince yourself of anything, right? But from 7 to 7, if you need me and you want an answer, give me a call. And guess how many calls I've had since I announced it to my executive team and to our board.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, you know what? It's funny. I like to say to people, you don't want your gravestone to read, he was the best executive ever, right? Or he worked the hardest ever. I mean, you want it to be about the other things that you hold dear. So I think it's great to hear about that pivot and that turnaround. And
And
yeah, good.
Can I add something?
Yeah,
Because
of course.
it goes into a question, and it goes to Natalie asked, what are some practical steps you can do to change your organizational culture to include more care for the self? And to be honest, you have to give credit to Warren and what he's been able to do. Laurel at the front says there's a distinct difference between Warren of January and Warren of today. And you're not going to hide that because it's seen in the way you show up. It's seen in your overall energy level. It's seen in the way that you lead. Warren's no different a person today than he was in January. He's no more capable today than he was then. But what he's done is he's mastered his energy input and output. He's mastered his ability to be able to show who's showing up when he goes and leads his 5,500 people. When he goes and is impacting his executive team on a day-to-day basis, when he's on with his board, when he's doing all of these things that he has to do on a day-to-day basis, the same person is showing up, but he's now no longer showing up as 60% of him. He's showing up as 80 and 90% of him every single day. And so going back to some practical steps you can do to include in organizational change is one, be very vocal to your, we talk about this all the time, and I love going into organizations. I love this story. We went into an organization, and the first thing that they did for us was they sat us down and they showed us the beautiful, big, beautiful conference room. It had commitment, loyalty, safety. What other words did they have? Hard work, all plastered all along the wall. And I said, how did you guys come up with all these words? And they're like, oh, it's something that our executive team decided upon, and we put them up here. And I was like, oh, this is great. Like, what's your turnover rate? Oh, we're turning over pretty high right now, like 22%. Loyalty. Oh, okay. So why is that? Well, and then we started getting into the finger pointing and everything else. And everything starts from the top down. It starts from not just saying you're these things, talking about these things, but doing it. And it stems from setting boundaries. Warren talked about it. He doesn't send emails from 7 at night until 7 in the morning. Why? Because what does his executive team do when all of a sudden they're out at a beautiful dinner with their family and they happen to go to the bathroom and they see an email from Warren at 10:30, not knowing the context, not knowing the shape, not knowing anything. And it ruins the rest of their night because they're, oh my gosh, is Warren upset? Does he need this now? Do I have to do this? Versus sending it at 8 o'clock the next morning. Or being able to have a conversation and see Warren meditating in the middle of the day if you were in the office. Or have a conversation and come the end of come the end of the year, Warren's looking at all of his executive teams and how many people have taken vacation time, saying, hey, you know what? By May, I need you to have taken 50% of your vacation time. If you haven't, you are failing everybody else. That's a complete different mind shift from either A, not having the conversation, or B, not putting these things in place for anybody. And so by having these are practical steps that we can do on a day-to-day basis, and it starts from having boundaries. It starts from literally putting these things in place, having conversations with those around you. And what does it do? It increases awareness at work. It increases their ownership level at work. It increases their loyalty. It increases the sustainability. It increases the in-person awareness at work. All of these things that ultimately empower a better, more productive employee and team member, leadership team, whatever it is that you're talking about. Go for it, Warren.
Yeah, I just want to build on what Justin said, because there's a big difference between showing up and being present.
Yeah.
And if somebody said, you can go for a 15-minute walk, and instead of just showing up, you go to a one-on-one with one of your team members and you're present. Or you go to have a hard conversation, and in advance of that, you meditate. Or, one of the benefits of COVID is, I can hop in my hot tub for 15 minutes throughout the course of the day and just think about, I've got a really hard conversation to have. How do I want it to go? Because oftentimes we go from meeting to meeting and we go boom, boom, boom. We're thinking about it, but we're not thinking about it. Versus saying, I need to be completely present in this moment. I need to think about it. I need to anticipate what I want the outcomes to be, and actually investing the time. Because I think you just end up with much more productive conversations. And I can tell you, as part of my startup plan in the morning that I mentioned, I literally think about each one of my direct reports, and I think about, what do I need to do for them today? What do I need to do for them tomorrow? How can I support them better? Because that's really, as a CEO, that's your job, right? So, but when you go through the exercise and you actually write it down and you go, here's how I'm going to show up today. The results, as a business, the equivalent, we're in a cooperative, but the equivalent of our EBITDA is plus 70% year over year. We've almost eliminated our debt. The changes in business results are remarkable. And that's why our executive team is actually going to go through the program with Justin and Alyse, because it's a combination of, I think it'll be good for everyone individually, but it's also a very good team building piece as well, because we can hold each other accountable to doing the things that we need to do.
That's fantastic. You mentioned earlier, and I wanted to point this out. You mentioned earlier about taking a 15-minute walk, but I see too much, especially here in New York City, people taking their 15-minute walk, but they're listening, they're on their phone, or they're doing something that's not allowing them to actually take that walk or enjoy that walk. And I think that has to do a little bit with, one of the things that I know, Justin, you talk about is the whole concept of time management and sort of resource management and energy management, right? And to me, if you're gonna try to be, able to carve out those 15 minutes to walk, then just walk, right? And not necessarily sort of defeat the benefit of the walk by killing it with some other stuff. Does that make sense? Or
and that's what I wanted to kind of bring back around. And Warren touched on it. I'll kind of go back and forth between two concepts here. I'll address what you asked first. So that goes back to the concept of multitasking. Going back to the concept of, we cannot just stay focused on one intention, because our energy is constantly in 9 different directions. And so by being able to intentionally, purposefully go for that walk. Why am I going for that walk? Because that's giving me energy in. If going for a walk doesn't give you energy, then don't do it. I have a lot of clients. I hate meditation. Great. Then we're not putting that in our on our
Right.
we're not putting that on our energy in buffet. Get rid of it. If the only thing that you can think of that gives you energy in is shaving, then let's shave 2 times a day. If that's literally the only thing. And that's, to be honest, that's how we've had clients that are like, nothing gives me energy in. It's own shaving, I guess. Great. We're shaving 2 to 3 times a day, I guess. That's how we're starting. And very slowly we go from having one thing to having 50, because they've now given themselves a moment to be aware of what is actually bringing energy in to them. And I'll go back to that concept of what Warren talked about. What makes Warren an incredible CEO, an extremely successful man, is that if you noticed how he led, he goes, what's the questions he asked himself first thing in the morning? How do I need to show up for my team? How do I need to show up for my direct reports today, tomorrow, the day after? He's always thinking about other people. What is that? That's energy out. And continually being in that space, in a leadership role, that's where a lot of us need to serve from. It's constant energy out. And by living there, Warren ultimately put himself in the place that he did come January, where there was no more to give. And because there was no more of him to give, he thus couldn't serve the people he was trying to serve as best as he could. And the moment that we realign and go back to focus on energy in, go back to refill the cup, go back to create this energy rhythm, go back and forth between overreaching and regeneration, we end up in this ownership space. We end up in this space that you can perform continually and consistently day in and day out. Going back to what I said at the beginning, talent gets you noticed. Warren, top 1% of leaders globally in how he does his business. But if he's not able to do it consistently, he's no better than anybody else, because you need to be able to utilize your talent, and consistency gets you paid. And that's where it comes back to, is being able to create that rhythm between overreaching and regeneration, to be in that ownership space and continue to give, continue to serve. When we ask that question, how closely is energy tied to mental health? It's extremely close, because if we think about it, along the horizontal axis of that 4-point quadrant point I just talked about, and this is where, if Alyse was here, she would discuss this a little bit more, but it's anabolic and catabolic energy. We have a way, or Alyse has a way that she's created, that you can now measure the cognitive ability, the leadership, the mentality, the inner energy of a person. It's a 7-point scale. Bottom 2 levels are very catabolic in nature, very conflict-oriented energy. Top 5, 3 through 7, are very anabolic in nature, very building, very flow-based, very uplifting, very positive, self-aware, that self-actualization, much more present. And what happens is the higher up you start to resonate on a regular basis. It's a scale. We all fall somewhere along that scale throughout the day. We shift. But the more that we can be more present and more default in that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 category, the more profitable we are, the more efficient we are, the more effective we are, the happier we are, the better leader we are, the more conscious we are, the more self-actualized we are, the more in flow we are, the better leader we are, all of those things that we're truly looking for. But yet we get ourselves in this continual circle of, I need to do more, I need to do more, I need to do more. And in actuality, we end up doing less.
Boy, that's perfect lead into my next question. I'm going to ask you both, and Warren, I want you to, if you don't mind answering first.
Sure.
But especially with younger people today, and actually this goes back historically, because I guess when I was young and I was coming out of school in 22, 23, 24, you have a lot to prove, and you haven't done a lot yet, so you constantly feel like you need to build that history behind you, and you need to not just prove, but you want to succeed so badly. But how can you tell, especially some of the younger people that work at your company, and Justin, some of the people you've worked with, how do you set boundaries, or how can they set boundaries where there's a point where it's ridiculous to work that 13th hour that day or night, because it's just downhill from there? How do you can you recommend certain things to them, or what would you say to somebody who's 23 and going through that struggle?
Yeah, I think I think a big part of it is the culture of the company, right? I mean, I worked in one company. It's a global. They've got 65,000 employees. One of the most performance-driven organizations that I've worked for, and you were almost expected to work 12, 13, 14, 15 hours a day. Whether you were 23, 53, that was just the way the culture is built. And that's not the culture that we're going to create. So we're going to create one where, it's all, we want to make sure that we're performance based. We want to make sure that we're focused on accountability, but ultimately define success. Because back to that first company I mentioned, at one point, I mean, from a financial point of view, I was making a lot of money. But I looked around and I went, my colleague, second marriage, third marriage, second marriage, third marriage, no relationship with their kids. So it's creating a culture where you go, what does success look like? And ultimately, you need to put results on the board from a business point of view. We all know that. But if you can do that, and you've got employees that are living a life that they want to live, that have the appropriate boundaries, and I think as leaders, we can coach them through that. Because I'm sure when I was 23, 24, 35, 45 for that matter, I had bosses looking at me going, you're working way too much, you need better work-life balance, all that. But you have to translate it into action, right? And make it safe for people to say, you know what? I am going to go for a 15-minute walk. I'm going to schedule it in. And because when they come back, if you believe when they come back, they're going to be that much more productive. And I say 15-minute walk, it's whatever you want to do. When you come back and you're that much more productive, again, I've got Laurel, who's our corporate secretary, on the line. He, I go back to January. She would send me stuff, and it would take me a couple of days to get back to her. And I'd get stuff, and I would just grind through it. Now I get things, and I look at it and I go, I'm knocking this stuff off. And it's not just getting it done, it's getting it done with so much more quality. So
right.
That would be my feedback.
That's fantastic. How about you, Justin?
And that right there is the example that I give, that time it doesn't matter anymore. When you manage energy, time no longer matters, because you can get more done and you can continue to do it at times when before, like Warren said, you were just grinding to get it out. I'm going to read a paragraph here from our book, because it's something that we're putting together. But I'll read this. It just hit home with what Warren was saying. So, in the frequent opportunities I have to speak to these promising young stars, they tell me that they see senior people buckling under the relentless workload. They observe escalating requirements for workplace activity outpacing the diminishing human energy supply required to fulfill demands. They note a retiring workforce that is in poor physical health despite an unprecedented media, marketing, and advertising blitz aimed at personal health and beauty. They witness older workers who have sacrificed their families and friendships on the altar of career success. They watch people who lack enthusiasm for their work or life because they have opted for money rather than rhythm. They seek the fragmented lives of people who have tried to tune into the 10,000 channels of business activity simultaneously and focused on none of them fully. They notice people who are leaving careers of prominence to play golf each day with hollow and frustrating results. This next generation of leaders is carefully observing those who preceded them and are now reaching their retirement age. These retirees have toiled for years but seem unfulfilled by their professional and personal lives. These young observers see the finished products of decades of personal neglect they perceive as unhealthy discrepancy between what they want and what they see that's being told to them, you have to do this.
Yeah.
If that's not powerful, like
Yeah.
that's the next generation of leaders that we're creating by not looking after our energy and treating it the way that we should, because otherwise, who are we actually leading? The people that really make the impact are those that you look at and go, God, this man, this woman is an unbelievable mother or father, is an unbelievable spouse. I see them smiling and laughing and playing and doing all the things I want to do. Yet they drive around in a Bentley. They've got a beautiful home. They go on vacations. They lead me. I want to be who they are. We don't. That's who we want to look up to. We don't want to look up to the guy that goes, God, I don't want to be that dude. Like, this guy just drags himself to work in the morning, like looking like he barely got any sleep last night, and his wife's blowing up his phone. He hasn't seen a kid's soccer game in 8 years, and he forgets that he just paid high school tuition for a daughter that just went into senior year in college. Like, he doesn't know it anymore. And that's what we see continually. And that paragraph is just so stunning in how we're actually leading and how the impact of those coming up can actually thus be impacted by us.
You know what? It's funny you mention it because I got this really cool trophy. It says #1 dad. It's really awesome. And I got it from my kid. God, I forgot his name. But anyway, so
We all do it.
yeah, I know. No, I'm kidding. No, I totally get that. So listen, I want to tie things together here, and we're going to head back to the tables because I want people to hear a little bit more and straight from you, Justin, and also from you, Warren, a little bit about, you know, and we don't need to go through the sort of the whole program and so forth now, but obviously people should reach out to you. If any of you who are watching this, listening to this, are part of a company that you observe has a culture that really needs a little bit of an adjustment or a complete facelift. But also if you have friends and family and loved ones and so forth that just clearly are just getting run down, it doesn't mean they need to quit their job or work half-time or something like that. It's just, it sounds like it's a few tweaks that can be made, not just
100%.
not just in time management, but mental. I mean, just how you do things. And I think this is all just fantastic stuff. In fact, I'm gonna have to, Justin, we're gonna have to do this again because, you know, I really want to talk at some point about HRV. I want to talk about, you know, how
we didn't
data.
even touch on that. We didn't even touch on the tactics.
What the hell, you know? Well, all right. So give me a tactic and Satan, do it in like double speed.
No need to rush through it. No need
I know, I'm kidding around. But listen, we can talk about that a little bit later. We can hang for a bit. But both of you guys, I mean, Warren, congratulations on #1. Your health, it seems like it's pivoted, which is nice. Not just physical
Huge.
health, but mental health, right?
Huge.
And family too, and everything else. And it sounds like to me that your company is way better off for it too, right? I mean, it is. They're probably seeing almost like a rejuvenated CEO, and that trickles down. And hopefully, especially when we all get back together to working together again, one way or the other, they'll all see that. They'll feel that from you that maybe they didn't feel a year ago, 2 years ago, and so forth. So congrats on that.
So thank you.
Yeah. And Justin, man, I know. I mean, this has been your thing for. Let's see, you're 67 years old, so minus 14 is what, 53. But anyway, you've obviously done this for a long time, and you know this inside and out. And I do encourage everybody to. I mean, look, I'll put myself out there first. I do probably work too long on something that probably I absolutely love doing, but it absolutely stresses me out to an extent. So I'm going to get my all this stuff, the data stuff, the tactics, everything else. So I'm in, and we haven't even heard from the way better half.
Yeah, you haven't heard from the magician herself.
the magician himself. So we'll make sure to have her on next time as well. But thanks again for both of you for sharing your time today and your brilliance. I mean, you're both fantastic. And you know, Justin, did you sort of hint that there's a book coming out? There's a book out. Do you have
Yes.
something?
Yeah.
Are you allowed to kind of do what I'm going to do, like shamelessly plug the book, like Win Again, available at Amazon?
No, I don't do that. It's in the works.
Cool.
We're looking at we're not going to rush this. We're looking at a September drop. So something that
Cool.
we've
That's
been
great.
working on for a couple months already, and it's going to need a little bit more work, but we're looking at a September launch.
Oh, that's well. Congrats in advance on that, because it's I can tell you, writing a book and pushing it through the whole process and everything else is also exhausting, but it's a fantastic legacy, and it's wonderful to be able to tell people that you wrote it, but also the content is what's there, and clearly, you know, you have some fantastic. I mean, what I always like are people that are dispensing advice and guidance that's actionable, that you can actually do stuff. It's not too deep in the skull. It's out there and in front of you. So congrats on that, Justin. Both of you, thank you so much for your time. And I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. It was great.
Thanks for being part of the Clubroom event today. It's been great having you on board. Check out all the resources available to the Win Again Academy. Go to the website, markmoyer.com, and you'll see all the previous events, podcast episodes, articles, and so much more. Check it out. And look, if you're an athlete, if you're an entrepreneur and a founder, or an executive looking to elevate your game and really take your business and your career to a whole new level, consider becoming a Win Again Academy member. We'd love to have you on board, because you get access 24/7 to an incredible Slack community of other members where you can really elevate your network and meet some really impressive people. You'll also get a personalized copy of my book, Win Again, the job search handbook for athletes and non-athletes looking to really transform their life and their career. You'll also get seamless entry into the Clubroom events, and these events are absolutely amazing. Table-to-table networking, conversations with everybody at your own pace. It really is fun, but also incredibly great for your network. You've got to check those out. You'll also get discounts to future VIP events that we've got lined up. So consider joining, be a part of this community, be a part of that Slack channel. Come to these events. You'll meet some amazing people. Go to markmoyer.com/join-today and take advantage of all the things that you have to offer for an incredibly, incredibly great price. Check it out. We'd love to see you there, and see you in the Clubroom soon. Thanks.